On to part 2 straight away. This video is where I'll go over the cognitive functions. If you haven't seen it yet, I made a video introducing Myers-Briggs and the 4 letters and what those stand for. But in that video, I said that that's incomplete, and now we're moving on to the cognitive functions. So the cognitive functions is where the real kind of, I guess, science behind Myers-Briggs comes in. Actually, do you know what? I realized today that I've been teaching science for 10 years, and Myers-Briggs is often dubbed as like pseudoscience, meaning there isn't scientific backing for it. But I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It works. It makes sense to me. In this video, we're jumping into the cognitive functions. This is where it becomes interesting, you guys. So those 4 letters, they map onto 4 cognitive functions. And this is called a function stack. So let's do my one as an example, because this also will help you understand me better. So my 4 letters, when I do the test, and I've done the test a few times, it always comes out the same. I am a very textbook ENFP. So my 4 letters are E, N, F, and P. So if we're just looking at those 4 letters by themselves, that means that I am extroverted, intuitive, feelings-based, and prospecting, meaning I'm quite flexible with my schedule. I mean, for the most part, that's fairly accurate. But for example, the E at the beginning, I would contest that. I would say, actually, I'm an ambivert. I definitely have an extroverted side to me, but I also need a lot of time to myself to ruminate, to process things, to reflect on things. So that is incomplete, as I said, and it's explained when we use the cognitive functions. So ENFP maps onto 4 cognitive functions. The functions for me are extroverted intuition, so NE, which is like how, typology nerds write it. Then it's introverted feeling, FI, then extroverted thinking, TE, and then introverted sensing, SI. Okay, so that's my function stack, NEFITESI. What does that mean? So what that means is extroverted intuition is the function. Extroverted intuition is this extremely powerful intuitive function. You're taking in your surroundings all the time, people and environments and everything. You're taking everything in, and you are connecting dots constantly. So you're constantly making intuitive connections between different concepts and different people. Like you might see someone and be like, oh, that person looks like that person, or that person looks like that person, or this reminds me of this, or you're constantly making these connections between things. It's also the function that's associated with seeing possibilities, seeing potential. ENFPs are so optimistic as people because we're constantly seeing all the different ways something can go, and we can see the potential of a person or a place or a project or whatever it might be. We are very optimistic because we can see the best case scenario. We can see so many different ways something could play out as well. So that's kind of what my brain does naturally all the time, is make intuitive connections between things. See the video on immigration. I made a lot of connections in that one. And that's supported by my second function, introverted feeling. So introverted feeling is all about my personal feelings. If it's an introverted function, it's to do with you. So introverted feeling is, how do I feel about something? And what are my core values? It's kind of what's important to you as a person, what feels right to you as a person, right? Now, somebody with a logical function near the top is going to look at somebody like me making decisions based on what feels right, like I'm insane, right? The ENFPs quite often come across as a little bit insane because our functions lend themselves to that insanity. We can see all the different ways something could possibly go, and we make our decisions based off of what feels right to us. And so that, to a lot of people who are not ENFP, we are going to seem crazy, right? It's just how our brains work. The third function is extroverted thinking, which is getting stuff done, especially if you have a goal. If you've got a goal and you apply that extroverted thinking function, you get it done. You get all the tasks done until you reach the goal. I have it third in my stack. So I have it, but it's lower down in the stack. It's a weaker function. Therefore, it's very difficult for me, or has always been very difficult for me, to get stuff done. For example, these videos, right? I've said it in so many videos. I'm trying to be consistent, trying to get it done. And my extroverted thinking function is just not functioning. Most of the time, it's there as the third function. I'd much rather be exploring ideas and making intuitive connections than getting stuff done, because my brain's wired like that. However, with some conscious thoughts and some effort, you can use that extroverted thinking function, as I'm doing right now. And so, getting stuff done. Okay, that's what ETE means. Introverted sensing is all about your physical sensory environment. Introverted sensing is all about your physical surroundings, your sensory world, and it's your personal sensory world because it's an introverted function. So my personal sensory world is, where is my stuff? Where's my phone? Where are my keys? Where's my, and it's not just the real world now, it's also our digital world. So it's all your unread emails. It's the fourth function. It's the weakest function. It's your inferior function, it's called. And because it's so weak, ENFPs tend to struggle with our sensory world, our personal belongings, right? The number of times that I have lost things in my life, it drove my mum insane. my mum's not an ENFP. She's a type that kind of is much better with her sensory world, and so much more organized. And so it drove my mum up the wall. I would lose things all the time because I'm not paying attention to my sensory environment, my physical surroundings. So this shows up as generally being a little bit unorganized in your life. But of course, with work, you can use this function more, and you can kind of, especially as you get older. And now that I'm in my 30s, my introverted sensing has gotten much better. You start to see that it's useful a little bit later in life. So in your 30s, for example. So that's my function stack with those four functions. Let's take another example of a type that is the most different to me that you could possibly be. Okay, so there are 8 cognitive functions altogether. You've seen 4 of them in my stack. I'm going to show you a different example, this time with an ISTP. An ISTP is as different as you can possibly be from an ENFP, and different not in a complementary way, different in a very clashing way. Okay, so ISTPs have the exact opposite 4 functions and in a completely different order. Okay, so ISTPs, I could have also picked ESTPs, they're also very different, but let's go with the ISTP. So ISTP, if you just look at the 4 letters by themselves, introverted, sensing or observant, thinking, and prospecting. You might be wondering why I didn't pick an ISTJ as my exact opposite. I'll do a video on that in the future. Just trust me on this one. An ISTP and I have a lot less in common than an ISTJ. So ISTPs, let's look at their function stack as well. Their dominant function is introverted thinking. So this is a completely different start, right? I started with extroverted intuition, which is all about exploring and it's intuitive connections. Introverted thinking is your personal system of logic, laser focused logic. ISTPs have logical consistency like no other, except maybe their close cousin INTP. Okay, so ISTPs have an amazing system of logic right at the start of their stack. So they're highly logical beings. Already we're seeing a big contrast between me and an ISTP. Their second function is extroverted sensing, SE. So first it's TI, then it's SE. Extroverted sensing is being in the real world with your senses, just kind of seeing what's here in front of you. So ISTPs can be quite indulgent. They like you can get a foodie ISTP. They love good food. Or ISTPs, they kind of just enjoy their senses. They are in their real world with their senses. So you can see how this is also a contrast to somebody who is more intuitive, who lives in their head a little bit more than in the sensory world. So we start with TI, then SE. Their third function is introverted intuition. So NI. This is probably the hardest one for me to get my head around because I have an NE as my function, as my dominant function. NI is your personal intuition, your personal intuitive system. So it's mapping patterns over a long period of time, and it makes sense to you intuitively. So ISTPs have this as their third function, which is obviously slightly weaker than their strong logic at the beginning. So you've got NI, which is, yeah, just spotting intuitive patterns over time using their own internal map, own internal intuitive map. And finally, for an ISTP, this is the weakness of an ISTP, something that they really struggle with, or at least they struggle with until about their 30s, maybe 40s, where they start to see the use in this inferior function, the last one. And their last function is extroverted feeling, other people's emotions. All right, so extroverted feeling is tuning into other people's emotions and being able to tell what somebody else is feeling without even them saying anything, right? So people who have that as their dominant function are amazing. They just know what you're feeling. You don't even have to say anything. So ISTPs have that as their last function. It's the opposite of having a personal logic system, right? Tuning into other people's emotions and tuning into your own system of logic. Those two are polar opposites of each other. That's why it's their last and weakest function. So I've gone on for a while now, but hopefully these two examples give you kind of a range and kind of show you the cognitive functions and how to use Myers-Briggs properly. So what you can do if you want to find out your cognitive function stack, you could literally do the test and then Google, if you're an ISFP, just Google ISFP function stack and you will find your function stack. And then you can come back to this video and watch the bits about each of the functions. So the functions are much more accurate in terms of understanding Myers-Briggs and how your brain works. So hopefully this video has cleared up how to use Myers-Briggs. I'm going to make so many more videos on Myers-Briggs. There's so much to tell you guys. I've done so much research the last few years. And my latest project is dating using Myers-Briggs. So I've been going on dates with people using Myers-Briggs as my guide, and I have so much information to share with you guys about the dynamic between an ENFP and many of the other types at this point. So stay tuned for those videos. They are coming, and I'm going to use my extroverted thinking function a little bit more to get these videos out to you in a more timely manner. The last thing I want to say is the reason I love Myers-Briggs so much is because it's helped me understand and accept other people. And so I'm hoping with this video series where I explain Myers-Briggs and how to use the functions, you can type yourself and figure out who you are, right? What is it that you do best in your brain and what are your weaknesses? And can you apply that to other people and can you accept them as they are? If I see an ENTJ being highly efficient and a bit of a workaholic, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. They're an ENTJ and I can accept them and love them fully for who they are, right? An ISTP is so logical. They're very, very logical. They are masterminds of logic. And I can appreciate that in an ISTP and love them for who they are. An ENFP like myself is not going to be the most organized and not going to be the most productive, but we have this amazing ability to make intuitive connections between things so I can love myself for who I am. Okay, so I use Myers-Briggs as a tool for propagating radical love for myself and for everyone else. So the message still stands as always on this channel. Embody love for yourself and for everyone else. I'll see you in the next video.